today we are more and more using our devices, we are more and more basing our lives on our devices. We need to check the emails constantly, we use our social media apps. If we go to travel somewhere, we need to post it on our social media. Internet has become crucial and essential part of our lives. But what happens if use of internet becomes our only and main concern throughout the day? Then we talk about internet addiction. When we talk about internet addiction, there are several signs that a person is addicted to internet. First, we can probably see a lot of our friends, a lot of our colleagues, and a lot of young people we work as youth workers with that are constantly on their phones, checking what is happening. A lot of times when we organize meetings of local youth clubs, we can see young people on their phones. But how to know when that is just a normal 21st century use of phone, and how to know when that becomes an internet addiction? There are several signs of internet addiction that we presented in our material. First of the signs is the urge to constantly use internet, to constantly be online. This urge can be shown in a way that we are constantly searching for to see if we are connected, if there are new notifications, to see what is happening with our internet and why the internet is maybe not functioning. Second sign is losing the control over the time. What does that mean? That we go on, for example, TikTok, and when we look at our watch, already hour and a half is gone and we thought it was only few minutes. Third sign is anxiety. Anxiety comes in different forms and formats. We can talk about anxiety when we are disconnected from our phone, we need to leave it at the charger, or when we don't have internet connection. Fourth sign of internet addiction is the need to use the internet for longer periods of time in order to feel any satisfaction. That can be plastically described as a way that we need to check our internet in order to be able to function. We need to check our social media, we need to check maybe our mails, we need to check if there are new videos on TikTok, etc. Almost the last sign is neglecting other parts of our lives and focusing just on internet. And this is point of time when we can see that internet addiction is really severe, because we are just focused on our internet, on our connection, on checking the notifications, checking what is happening in the online surrounding, while we don't think about and we don't give attention to our real life surrounding. This can be plastically seen, for example, when huge life events happen. We go for a wedding and then we are on our phone constantly, or we go to a birthday party. If we're a young person, we go to our friend's birthday party, but we are constantly on our phone checking what is happening, and we cannot be separated from our phone. And last but not least sign is continuing with internet addiction without paying attention on anything that is happening around us. Maybe there is an urgent test that we need to prepare for in our school, or we need to prepare for some big life event, but no, we are still focused on scrolling through social media and losing hour after hour of our life. Then types of internet addiction. We need to make differentiate what are the different types of internet addiction. One of the first one is addiction to social networks, social media, and this is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and much more. Second type of internet addiction is addiction to online games. Constantly being addicted to our games, going to the next levels of the games, waiting for some upgrades in the games to happen or to unlock for us to be able to continue playing our games. Then we have gambling or online gambling addiction, being addicted to checking the results of the matches, being addicted to playing poker online, etc. Fourth type of internet addiction is addiction to online shopping, going constantly on eBay, on Amazon, or on Wish, and many other apps, and going there just to feel satisfied with ourselves by buying new things. Or it doesn't have to be just buying, it's enough to be our need to constantly check if there are new merchandise that we can buy online. Fifth type of internet addiction is addiction on the constant search for new information, constantly checking on something, constantly checking the information. When we go out with our friends, constantly checking if some information from the conversation are correct, if we need some statistical data. And last but not least is cybersex addiction to internet, and this the last type of internet addiction is actually something that we need to be careful to differentiate between the addiction and between being bullied through extortion and different types of negative side effects that are connected to cyber sex. Next, we talk about prevention of internet addiction. How to prevent internet addiction, how to be aware. First step is always to be aware. We need to check how much time we spend online. Check a lot of our smartphones have now those options to check how much time we spent in the last 7 days, 14, etc. And for this we have a great part of educational activities that we will show later that are dedicated actually to checking how much time we spent online. In order to be aware if we are addicted to internet and should we take care of our addiction, first step is to critically assess our use of internet and our use of apps and to see if we are addicted. If we see that we might be addicted, then one of the first ways of how to prevent it is to keep our devices in another room, to keep maybe our computer just on the dedicated spot where we use it, or maybe in the living room, or maybe in our office, on our table in the room, etc. Second is to try to turn off internet in some certain periods of times. When we are out with our friends, to turn off mobile internet on our phones, and to actually live in the moment. Then we have breaking the behavior pattern, checking if there are parts of the times or times in the day when we are constantly on our phones, and to see that to break these patterns, to maybe be more dedicated to our surrounding, to hanging out with our friends rather than hanging out on our devices. Next is informing ourselves about healthy ways on how to consume internet and how to use the apps. Then we have finding some additional hobby that is maybe more physical and more in real life rather than virtual life. Then we have go to sleep on time as one of the ways, because internet addiction a lot of times will bring us to that point where we search through internet, we use the apps constantly, and then we look at our watch and we can see the dawn is already coming, the morning is coming, and we spend the whole night browsing through the internet or using the app or playing the games or gambling online, etc. One of the tips and tricks, or one of the advices how to prevent and how to fight internet addiction, is actually to use an alarm or stopwatch or some other way on how to see how much time we use on internet, and to dedicate specific parts of the time, specific minutes or hours that we are just using the internet or the apps, and then not use it in the rest of the day. If we are not able to do that, there is always an option to install an application that is dedicated exactly doing this, or we can also break our patterns if we maybe like to eat while having our phone in front of ourselves, or having our laptop or tablet in front of ourselves and watching the show, or gambling online, or ordering some new stuff, or checking what is new in Zara. We can always break this pattern and say, okay, we are not eating anymore with our devices, we are eating on our own or with our friends or with family, etc. One cool tip for youngsters is actually, it's cool to check with your parents or to check with youth workers or to check with some other adults how they can help us in preventing misuse and obsessive amount of time use of internet and apps. And last but not least, it's always good to maybe make a break and turn off our social media and pause ourselves on social media. Welcome to the next part of our webinar, where we talk about the session dedicated to internet addiction. This session is actually based on everything that we said so far in introduction to internet addiction and defining the internet addiction, and what are the symptoms and how we can recognize it. So the objectives of this session is actually to help participants learn more about what is internet addiction, to help them define what are the symptoms and how we can recognize internet addiction, and of course how to fight against the internet addiction, and how to help our friends or our colleagues or young people we work with. Since this workshop is dealing with the basics of internet addiction and introducing what internet addiction is and how to deal with internet addiction, it is both applicable and really applicable both to the groups of young people and youth workers. If you work with young people, you will be more focused on understanding and helping them understand internet addiction and what it's about and how to recognize it and how to know on time when it's a good point in our life to rethink how much we use our devices. If you implement this session, this workshop with youth workers, we will talk about it on some higher level and more about recognizing how our youngsters are maybe using too much time, spending too much time on their devices and how to help them out. Based on that, we have the objectives explained. Ideal duration of this workshop, of this session is 90 minutes, but in practice it would be beneficial if you would have around 100 minutes up to 2 hours or 120 minutes, because this session has a lot of practical parts. This session has role plays and scenarios that participants need to go through. You will need really basic materials for this session, some pens and pencils, some A4 papers, and of course handouts with case studies. If you implement it in groups where everyone brings their own devices, you don't even need to print handouts, and you can make it a more eco-friendly way of running the session and running the workshop. And we start step by step. In first step, you will ask participants to take their smart devices and to see if they have app on their devices, to see how much time they spent online in last 7 or 15 days or last month or 2 months, whatever period you decide is best applicable for the group you work with. And of course, they will need to analyze. If they don't have this app, you will adjust according to that, and you will ask them to check maybe the apps and try to figure out how much time they spent, try to calculate on their own how much time they spent in each app and what are the most used apps on their smart devices. Then in the second step, we have you as a facilitator. After everyone had a chance to see how much time they spent, and a lot of times you will have people who say they spent from 4 to 5 hours per day on their devices, or 40, 50 and plus hours on their smart devices per week. And this is a great introduction to theoretical inputs, to understanding what internet addiction is, defining internet addiction, and then in the second part, some characteristics of internet addiction, and of course providing some discussion. For the discussion, you can ask participants, did they know these facts? Were they aware about this? Do they know some of their friends or some of their youngsters they work who they think are really addicted? And you can always add on some of the questions that we suggested here, such as how much time do you spend online daily? Have you ever felt maybe anxious because of the time you spent online, etc. In the third step, this is where the fun part of the session happens. This is not the part where you put a lot of theoretical inputs, but you actually give a chance to participants to go on their own and analyze a real life scenarios. We provided you with 4 case studies that you can have them printed out, or you can share them in digital format. And one of the examples is John, who is a 17 years old high school student who spends from 8 to 10 hours per day on his devices playing the games. He's always late, etc. And for each of the case studies, participants need to discuss, is this realistic? Needs to discuss what would they do if they were their peer, what would they do if they were their youth worker or professor or teacher, depending on which group of educators or youngsters you work with. You give around 30 to 40 minutes to participants to discuss and actually prepare role plays based on the scenarios. You can add additional steps depending on how advanced the group is, so they can maybe have a task to additionally develop what happens after this scenario to make scenario longer, and they need to prepare role plays. After everyone had a chance to prepare the role plays, we go to the next step, which is actually showing the role plays. Participants go in the circle and one by one groups present the role plays, present what is happening in their case studies, and after each role play you give a chance to the rest of the participants to discuss a bit about it. You can always ask questions such as, is this realistic? How would you behave in this situation? How would you help to this young person? How would you react as a peer, how would you react as a teacher, and different roles that we have around young people that might be addicted to internet. And of course, you end the session, you end the workshop with some debriefing and conclusions and discussions. Here we didn't put a lot of questions for discussion. We gave you more advices to see what will happen during the role plays, what will happen during the first part of the session, and then you can base your debriefing and conclusions on what came out from the group. We have some modifications here. You can always use Zoom or Google Meetup or Microsoft Teams or WebEx or any additional application. You can go in GatherTown if you have a group of young people. This would be an interesting experience to use GatherTown for this session. And some tips and tricks is that you need to prepare yourself with the case studies depending on your country, your local realities, depending on where you implement the workshop, you need to adapt it to the circumstances, and you can always develop new scenarios and adapt existing scenarios. You can adapt the names, adapt the realities, etc. And expected outcomes, as we said in the beginning, participants will understand a bit more what is internet addiction, they will know more about symptoms of internet addiction, and they will be more prepared to recognize internet addiction when they see it in other young people, or as youth workers and teachers when they see it in young people they work with, and they will be more critically prepared to discuss it and to reach out and help and see what are the ways to help fight internet addiction.